Hello and welcome to the Adulting Well podcast. I am your co-host Joshua and I am joined by Kevin. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing well, Joshua, and I'm your co-host, Kevin. Today on the program, we have Lynn Kott. She is a professional illustrator. She does some amazing pet portraits. If you've seen them, you will know them because she definitely has a specific style. And she also designs graphics and does a whole bunch of other stuff. She does work for Chronicle Books. I know that you've done a bunch of work for our previous guest as well, Hannah Shaw. And you are collaborating on some other stuff that you would not tell me about in our last podcast.
Oh yeah, top secret projects.
Top secret kitty projects. You, not terribly long ago, moved from the Bay Area to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I know it's probably been a couple of years now. And we met maybe 8 years ago at Noise Pop Festival. You were one of the many amazing people that answered my call for merchandise help. So welcome to the program, and thank you so much for taking the time, especially this late in your home, to talk to us.
Oh yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what brought you into. I know you through music, and that's a lot of what we talk about here, but maybe talk a little bit about what it was like when you were young and what sort of molded your artistic acumen, because I know you were immediately a cat person. So we can talk a little bit about that and maybe a little bit about sort of how that developed, and that would be great.
I'm also like an old school vegan. I think I've been vegan for 19 years now.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I should do something for my 20th anniversary next summer or something.
Did you have cats growing up?
Yeah, I did. My first word was kitty as a child.
Okay. Game over.
Yep.
Yeah, set spike. So I've always been an animal lover. My mom was a big recycling advocate and like environmental advocate. She was the person on the block who would separate out all the recycling, because in the Midwest you had to do that and tie your like newspapers together and all that. So
was that considered like kind of not the status quo at that time? Probably.
No, I'm probably of that. I'm dating myself a little. I'm probably of that era when recycling wasn't cool.
Sure.
And I think my mom pulled out a newspaper article recently that I wrote to, like, when I realized what pollution was and what people were doing to the planet. I think in like third grade, I wrote to the local newspaper as a child, irate at how like adults were treating the planet. And she found that and she's like, "Here, look, you've always been like this."
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And were you drawing too when you were young?
I did. She said the only thing that would keep me quiet was like taping paper to my high chair, and I would just like draw and do all that. But I'm of the school of thought that I don't think that you're like born with innate talent. I think that it takes the 10,000 hours to get good at something. Like, I think if you put in the work, you will get good at the thing.
I agree with that. I think that's absolutely true.
So were you just drawing all the time then when you were younger?
Yeah. I drew a lot. I wanted to be a writer briefly when I was in elementary school, and I would write like really sprawling like stories and illustrate them. And I think my fifth grade teacher, we had to like write a story for our final project. My fifth grade teacher said, "Fifth graders don't write stories like this," and she threw it in the garbage. Oh. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not a writer.
Wow.
She killed it.
Oh my gosh.
What was Netflix bought that and made it into a show. So
they probably did. I mean, it was ripped off heavily from a book I had just read, like The Witch of Blackbird Pond.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's how young writers get their starts, is you take stuff you like and you kind of repurpose it, right?
Yeah.
It's not really stealing at that point. It's honing your skills.
I remember the first line of the story. Do you guys want to hear it?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you remembered the story.
It's the wind whipped wildly through her long auburn hair.
Wow.
Well, that teacher doesn't know what they're talking about.
He was dumb.
Bad call.
Jerk.
So So you obviously first word's kitty. Your mom's keeping you busy drawing. It's kind of how'd that develop? I mean, you say, and I am too. I've been vegan a really long time, and I'm probably much older than you too, and been vegan, most of my adult life. So that's almost 30 years now. So
Yeah.
it's crazy. But how did that come about? Because I always find that story to be incredibly interesting. Like, especially in the Midwest. I mean,
I think I had started going to shows when I was young, and even by myself when I was pretty young. So I think like when I was like 12, 11 or 12, I went to the Lollapalooza with Sonic Youth,
mhm.
where they were the headliner. And there was like a pita table there, and they like gave me a brochure. And I was like, whoa, mind blown. I didn't know any of this. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
I made the connection between like beef and cow. Like, it's so weird that we create different words for
Mhm.
those things, like our food and our animal, like
Yep.
to create a differentiation. But I think that like knowing about the slaughterhouses and like I don't know how how heavy to get here, but about the inhumane conditions, like,
Yeah.
really
Right.
changed my mind. So I became, a vegetarian at the age of 12,
Oh
and,
wow.
around 19, I had some friends, like, in college who were vegan, and they were like, "Well, I do this and this and this because, being vegetarian kinda isn't enough," because made the connection for me.
Sure.
And I was like, well, I'll try it. And like I kind of slowly took things out. Like I started drinking soy milk, and like not that I even do that now. My mom always asks me when I come home to like, what kind of milk do you want? And I'm like, nobody drinks soy milk just like straight up. I mean,
Right.
I don't. Do you?
No, it's for
No.
coffee and
Nobody.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of milk do you drink? But I just slowly eliminating things, I think,
Yeah.
was the way to go.
So
Yeah.
the music connection tends to be really strong too, and it's
Yeah.
interesting that you mentioned, the being at a Sonic Youth show. There was a pita table there. I actually have worked a few of those tables over the years. As we talked about in our last episode, I'm not as big a fan of pita now as I
Yeah.
once was for a variety of reasons. But
Yeah.
I think that the work that they do with youth is really important because
Mhm.
the education part of it is key. And when you're younger, you have a tendency to be a bit more empathetic as well. I think
Yeah.
as we get older, there's a lot more jadedness. But
Makes you sad.
the it's the kind of the crossover between music and attitudes around consumption are pretty tied in. So did you consider yourself a punk kid? Were you going to punk shows and as well as like the big like music festivals and
I was, I mean, probably a lot more so in college.
yeah,
I don't know that I like even quite like I think I understood that I had kind of missed punk
right,
by the time I was a kid. So I think I was in the what did they call it, like, second wave emo, like, Sunny Day Real Estate Promise Ring era
sure,
Sure.
of
Yeah, yeah,
kids
yeah.
going to shows. Like, I think I went to shows, like, twice a week, if not
wow.
more than that,
And where did you go to college? Just out of curiosity.
in, College for Creative Studies in Detroit.
Okay. Oh,
Mm.
so yeah, so there were some great venues there. The St.
Yeah,
Andrews Hall's there,
the
and
shelter, sure.
yeah, the shelter. I saw. I saw. I lived outside of Detroit briefly when I was in high school, so I saw the band Shriekback at the shelter, and definitely went to a bunch of club kind of shows at St. Andrews, and then club shows at the shelter, and also Royal Oak Music Theater is fantastic. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, that's actually I think I couldn't afford that at the time, so
that
that's quite big
makes
rate.
sense. I don't know what the other venues were. I think my first punk show was actually like that official, where I was like, I knowingly went to a punk show, was at the Hungry Brain in Detroit, which probably, I don't know if it was still around then, but I
Yeah,
saw Dayglow Abortions open for Raw Power,
I've heard
which is
tell.
like a crazy, I mean, especially there. But so how was it going to college in Detroit at that time? Because it was a pretty rough community. I would guess that's what the late 90s,
Early thousands.
early thousands.
Yeah. It wasn't that bad. I had heard tell, like, we weren't allowed to go to Detroit as kids.
Right.
Um, because like our parents had gone through like the Detroit like uprising in the 70s, and
Right.
like they were all scared to go there as white people. And so now, like, when I was like growing up, they're like, oh, you're going to school in Detroit, like, get into your car, like go your route, and like know where you're going and be safe. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, as a youth, I think I was not naive, but like I saw things clearly. Like I saw things, like I would talk to people and be open, and like, if you're like, there's a dark alley, I'm not going to go down there by myself. Like,
Sure.
I'm not stupid, but like also I'm open to things and I'll talk to people.
Yeah.
Do you find, like, I find as I get older relating to the parents in that story more? Like when I was younger,
sure.
I went around the East Bay and Oakland, all these places. I didn't care where I was or anything. I was invincible. And now when I'm older, I'm way more sketched out when I walk around. It's a shame.
Yeah. Yeah. I before I moved away from Oakland, I lived in the dirty 30s.
Okay.
Off of San Pablo.
Yep.
Oh, right.
And like my partner at the time would like walk from like 25th or something, like up San Pablo, like looking at their phone and like just being.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how are you doing that? That's not okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Get jumped, dude.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting. I actually had a friend get mugged in that area. And it was no joke. I mean, he ended up in the hospital, you know? And so,
I lived at 55th in San Pablo.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Yeah. I lived in San Francisco. So,
No, just kidding.
when you were in school, where do you think you started? So, I mean, clearly, if you look at your work, and I'm not like an art critic by any stretch of the imagination. My wife is an artist, and she definitely knows a lot more about, people's styles. And she says things to me when we go to art shows, and I'm just like, okay, I feel like Homer Simpson. I'm like, okay, and but you definitely have a very specific style that you illustrate in, and it's I think it's very recognizable. Obviously I know you, so it's easier for me to say that because I've seen your work over the years. But how did you start developing that, and especially like when you started really like going towards animals and doing a lot of the cat illustrations that you do, but which by the way are really quite amazing.
Oh, thank you. My partner again and I started Oakland Drink and Draw.
Right.
Gosh, maybe 2010, 2011. And we started at, oh gosh, there's a bar that was famous for having greyhounds.
Okay.
In downtown Oakland, and I'm forgetting the name now.
Is it the Uptown?
Van Cleef, is that?
Oh yeah.
Van Cleef.
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
And then that we ended up outgrowing that and going to the new Parkway when they opened. And we would take up the mezzanine up there, and like at the end we had like 50 people coming every week Wednesday to just like a free event to come, and you didn't have to drink, but you did have to draw was our rule. And I think they're still going. They might be doing like digital events now.
Very cool.
But yeah, it was really fun. I like felt a strong sense of community there. And like, I think it forced a part of my practice in which I was able to like explore and just like not pay too close attention to it and kind of just like play around with things. And I think that really helped me like progress, like, to
Why
get
did
better.
that environment help you to do that? Did you feel like there was no expectations on what you were doing, so you felt freer or something?
Kind of. I mean, you're just kind of, you're not doing anything for a purpose.
Right.
And I've heard other artists talk about this too. Like Lisa Hannawalt talks about, like, she did like some sort of faux TED talk in which she talks about sculpting and as a means to like her creative practice. She would never show her sculptures to anybody,
Right.
but like it's that other creative thing that you do that helps you be more creative in the thing that you do, if that makes any sense.
That totally makes sense. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So I think that you should have something outside of the thing that you are creative at in order to be more creative in your own field.
Sure. Yeah.
In your own work.
So as you
I'm going to start a thing where everybody goes to a bar and they drink and podcast together.
That sounds great. I
actually sent something similar to Manny's in San Francisco before they closed down. I was like, hey, let's do like speed podcasting at Manny's, where we set up the setup and we just let people jump in and like interview each other for 10 minutes each.
Ah, I love it.
Right? I mean, my other idea, which I've talked to Joshua about, which I think is brilliant, but no one has picked up yet, is going around to thrift stores and buying up all the old slides that they have. Ooh. And getting a slide projector and projecting other people's vacation slides on a screen at a comedy club, and whoever's up has to do the narrative, and they don't get to see it ahead of time. So it's completely like off the cuff, right? So those are my two brilliant ideas: speed podcasting and vacation narration by a not member of the family.
I love that. I love that. I love thrift store finds, like recordings and like old photos and stuff like that.
Yeah, I found some amazing.
I think I was an old zine maker back in the day, and I would puffy vest zine making kid. But like I worked at a place that like had old maps, and so I would take those and like found things from thrift stores and make that.
That's so fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
What was your zine called?
Okay, so it's a weird name out of context, but it was called Nationalism because there's a National Coney Island chain that we would all go to as like kids, like because it was open 24 hours a day, and that's where you would go after shows and basically every night. So it was called Nationalism because of that, but not because of nationalism.
But if you read between the lines, you would find like your far right extreme views.
Of course. Yeah, obviously.
So where did you actually grow up? You went to college in Detroit. Where were you in the Midwest when you were young?
In the like metro area, like I was about 20 minutes north of Detroit in Auburn Hills.
I know Auburn Hills.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So check this out. Connection here. My father, for most of his working career, worked for a company called Taubman Corporation, and they manage all the shopping centers around there, and their headquarters is in Auburn Hills. So or maybe Farmington Hills. I don't know, one or the other. Anyway.
Okay.
So he managed for a brief time one of the malls out north of Detroit, cled to Pontiac.
Great Lakes Crossing.
What's that?
Was it Great Lakes Crossing?
It wasn't Great Lakes Crossing, but like they owned, I think there's like a 12 Oaks Mall on 12 Mile Road. And so it was Sterling Heights, the Sterling Heights Shopping Center.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and I, no joke, met Amy Mann of Till Tuesday at a signing event there that was like my dad's big, this is we're talking 1986, right? And this is like his big, like, I'm gonna introduce my son to this alternative music woman. And I was actually like really excited. I was like, oh my God, it's Amy Mann. This is really cool. Way to go, Dad.
That's awesome. Did you go to Record Time at all?
Yeah. Well, and there was a record store in Birmingham.
Okay.
Called, I can't remember what it was called. It was definitely an independent record store.
Yeah. Record Time was my local one. And they had a couple stores.
Right.
So the one in Ferndale was my go-to.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And so I've definitely traveled around that area quite a bit. I still have friends there that I talk to, actually.
I was wondering if it was Great Lakes Crossing because I don't know if you've ever looked. If you don't know, there's like some very specific local person right now that if you look at a map of that, it looks like a big wiener.
It's really?
No.
Shaped like a wiener. There's no getting around it. And so as a teen, we thought that was A+ humor.
That's really good. So you lived in Auburn Hills. What high school did you go to?
Avondale.
Avondale. Okay. So I went to West Bloomfield High School for a
Oh,
couple of years.
nice.
Yeah. And we we were a little wild for that town. Not quite.
Yeah.
I was like the California kid. I was wearing Black Flag t-shirts and they didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah.
So I think the restaurant that I worked for was actually there up until recently. Confetti's. It's like it was there for a long time. So I was a busboy.
I worked at the Birmingham 8, which is
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah. I started an open mic night there for like kids doing poetry and singing songs and stuff very quietly because it was a movie theater, but they thought it was a great idea and they gave me Employee of the Year, and I quit by just walking out one day.
Yeah. Well.
Because that was how good of an employee I was. I was like, I don't feel like I called my boss there and I said, would you be okay if I just left and didn't come back? And she's like, yeah, I get it. This is a crappy job.
Totally. So, I mean, we're kind of bouncing back and forth here, but so I want to focus in a little bit on like what I think is, both amazing work, but also your success, the cat designs and especially, you've done some really, really cool collaborations over the years. Obviously we mentioned Hannah, but you did something with John Hodgman. How did that come about?
Yeah. I actually do the pledge drive enamel pins and gifts for
Sorry.
That's okay. For Maximum Fun every year for their pledge drive. So I've done that for I think the last like 6 years or so. It initially started because Jesse Thorne and Jordan Morris said that they wanted they asked the internet for drawings of them as cats, and so I drew that, and they just liked it so much that I ended up doing a whole calendar of all their hosts as cats.
That's a great story. You threw yourself out there, you went for it. It's like and you were discovered.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I totally was. And so we've just like got a really good rapport since then. And I ended up working with some really amazing people like Amy Mann and Ted Leo.
Awesome.
For their Art of Process podcast.
I love Ted Leo.
Yeah.
And I've already told my Amy Mann story, so. My brush with Amy Mann. Ted Leo's amazing. That's really cool. And then obviously you've done some fun stuff for, the Kitten Lady, and there's a rumor that there's more to come because she very much touted you in her podcast episode.
Yeah, she's great.
So what, I mean, obviously, so you love cats, you love illustrating. What was your kind of aha moment around this? Like, how was it like all of a sudden you were like, oh my gosh, this is what I can do. And I can actually maybe even eke out a living from this.
Well, I don't know that I have a great like origin to that because, like, I think that every time something little like that happens, I think things are going to start happening to me now. And like, it's a slow progression. So I don't know if there is a single moment but everything that you do leads to something else. Right. Like, so because of A, like I get to F over there, and like, because of all these little connections, and each thing that you do leads to something else.
Yeah. Do you think that's a myth in general, that
there's a moment?
Yeah, the success looks like an overnight thing, and then it's always like, no, that band was around for 15 years before anything happened.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that there are some people who are in the right place at the right time doing the right thing.
Totally.
But I think most people who are successful in their craft end up putting in the work and like doing things, and like each thing is a progression.
Yeah. So, and I definitely don't want to detract from your other work and just focus on the cats and kitten stuff, because your other illustrations, and I just want to like, there's something I kind of want to just talk about too. And
sure. This sounds like a mic drop here.
No, I'm really curious how watercolor became your kind of your format of choice, because it's really difficult to work with.
That's what everyone says, but I think it's because I went to art school,
Right.
but I think it's because I'm so stingy with paint, and watercolor is something that even if it's completely dried out, years old, you can put water in it again
Right.
and it will reconstitute itself. And also, not for nothing, my aunt is like kind of a prolific watercolorer,
Oh,
um, watercolorist.
Hmm.
Uh, she went to the New School in New York in the 60s, when it was like the place to
yeah.
go. And then she got a scholarship or something to study in Stuttgart, Germany, after that. And now she teaches. She was just a professional on her own for years, but now she teaches at in Ireland, at like the University of, or like the Art Institute of Cork or something like that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well,
So
so
It's in the
you kind of
blood.
had somebody,
Yeah.
you had somebody that was like sort of ahead of you that you could
yeah,
look to as an inspiration as well.
for sure. But she told me not to be an artist. She was like, "Don't do it."
Well, all artists say that.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
never met an artist that's like, you should totally become an artist. It's the best thing ever.
lucrative.
I mean, they're like my wife graduated from CCA out here, and
Oh yeah,
she's an incredibly talented
yeah,
painter as well, and she works for Salesforce.
yeah.
And that's not disappointing in any way.
No,
It just, as she said, like getting together shows and doing all the work to get, like, especially if you're doing solo work, is so difficult and it takes up so much time. And even if you sell a bunch of paintings, when you go back and track the amount of hours that you had to put into it, she's
don't
like,
do that.
I couldn't figure it out, and
Yeah,
she's incredibly, smart and creative. So she's put like a lot of her creative energy into like raising our kids and also doing amazing things around our house. But,
yeah,
we're building her a studio in the next couple of weeks, which I'm super excited about. And I'm hoping that she gets back into her painting because
Mm.
she's got a very unique style as well. But I have to say, like watching people work over the years, and I worked, like, one of my merchandise businesses was out of the back of Receiver Gallery in the Mission back when that was still happening.
yep,
And watching like people come in and do their installations and like just really be so thoughtful about every single piece and where it was placed. Most artists were that way. Some were like, just put her here. They didn't really care. But like I was like, God, the diligence and the perfection kind of the craft of even hanging paintings is really, it's admirable, and it takes a lot of time. And when you talk about 10,000 hours of work, it's no joke
yeah,
to really perfect it. So, hats off to you for both perfecting what I think is a difficult medium, in my opinion. And again, I'm not an artist, but also like really having your style like shine through all this stuff. Cause, as I kind of look through your portfolio, it's like this stuff really, it's like it retains the cuteness of the animals, but it's also like has a little bit of realistic. It's just really beautiful work. And, so congrats on your success as well with this, because I know it's not easy.
yeah. I
Um,
like painting things that are either sad or funny to me.
yeah, totally. Like the bat, the dude bat.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so is a lot of your work now commissioned as well? Do you do a
Um,
fair amount of that kind of work, or?
well, here's the dirty secret: is that I have a day job,
Yeah,
that I work at, that I also make art. So I feel extraordinarily privileged to be able to make art for a living anyway,
absolutely.
but then also have this as a side hustle and like have published work. And I have things in like 3 or 4 languages now, that are sold all over the world. But like I still have to make a living and like get health insurance and
Yep,
like
Hmm.
do
totally.
the
Hmm.
thing.
So what is your day gig?
Um, I will not name the company, but I work making children's clothing graphics,
Awesome.
and prints for a big retailer.
That's amazing. I don't
Yeah,
have a
it's
problem with
cool.
that. Being, as you know, I'm in part of the apparel industry as well. I
Yes,
actually am the
I
one
do.
that puts those prints onto 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 garments. So or fabric, depending on what
Yeah.
the client needs. But yeah,
Yeah. Kevin
that's
works for
very.
Facebook.
Yeah.
I do from time to
I
time. Yes,
mean,
I
that's
admit it.
okay.
I admit it. It's like the Miriam Stahl episode where she grudgingly admitted that she goes in and does art kind of classes at Facebook.
I mean,
It doesn't pay to be an artist. I mean,
no, I mean, I'll be honest. If I could make money just hand screen printing stuff for
yeah,
people, I'd do it.
for sure.
I love it. I love making screens. I love like playing around with stuff to see that I'm getting the best sort of like coverage on stuff. But doing artwork screen printing wise, there's just not a lot of, unless you're like incredibly creative on the actual design side and you can print your own stuff. It's really hard to make money at, you know?
Well, do you find that, at least I found this, but do you find that you can trade with people and like set up
Yes.
that like trade economy? It's so much more like you're so much more able to do that when you are like a creative or an artist, like that you can be like, oh, I have this. Let me trade you for this because I value your time and resources.
Totally. Well, and that's, you know, it's interesting that you asked that because I was subletting to an artist, and you may know him, Paul Madonna from San Francisco. He did the Coffee Talk article in the Chronicle
That
for
sounds
years and
familiar.
years. But he's like him and I have been talking about him creating a couple of like 2 or 3 color designs and me hand printing the posters at limited
Yeah.
edition, and like how that might work, you know, because what I
Yeah.
want is I want like one of his pieces. I don't really care about getting paid. And I know if he does like a limited run of like, you know, 25 hand printed posters, he's going to make a lot of money on that, you know,
Yeah.
because he sells his stuff for a lot of money, and that's kind of where he's at in his career. But you know, I also like, you know, I'm covered in tattoos, and most of them are trades for t-shirts with tattoo artists,
Yeah.
you know, and that's just kind of how it's gone.
What
But I
about
love that.
podcasts? They like this podcast as it gets more successful just costs more and more money. So the more successful we get, the more money it costs.
I mean,
Yep.
I'm paying a ton to be here right now. So
Yeah. Right.
thank you guys for accepting my
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
thousands of dollars.
No
Yes.
problem.
So kind of moving on, there's a huge, I mean, the cat loving community is massive. I mean, it's funny because like the way I even heard about Hannah was from my former HR person, Sandra, who I'm going to mention by name this time. She came in wearing the Salt Girl shirt to work one day, and she knows that we print the Jawbreaker stuff.
Yeah.
So she was like, "Ha ha ha! Look what I'm wearing." I'm like, "Who made that shirt?" And so I started kind of looking at her and essentially crafting how I was going to approach her to come on the show, because,
Sure.
you know, when you've got 1 million plus followers on YouTube and Instagram, there's a manager between you and somebody like me asking that question. But it's just such a massive. And so Sandra was really she's like, look, you're vegan. I can't understand why you're not more like keyed into like cat rescue. You've rescued a bunch of dogs. Like, what's up here? And so she started educating me around this.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then I'm like, oh my, then I was like looking at Hannah's site and I'm like, what? Megan's on here. And then I'm going through my emails. I'm like, oh my God, that is who I thought it was. Right.
Action. Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about that, because you just did a convention and you're about to do CatCon.
For sure.
And obviously there's a difference now in doing it virtual versus in person, but talk a little bit about what that's done for you and your artwork as well. Cause I'm super curious, because cat people are incredibly loyal too.
For sure. I do some other conventions aside from like cat conventions, but cat conventions are really, I think probably Hannah and I, both of our niche. But the folks there, it kind of oscillates, like even between conventions, between pop culture and advocacy. Right. And sometimes they're like, they'll sway more or less towards one of those things. So you kind of have to, even at other conventions, you have to dial in what you're going to bring based on the people who are going to be there and who you are going to interact with. And that's what's really great about conventions, is that you finally get to meet all the friends that you've made on the internet. Cool. How I met Hannah, and like, I think it's probably tantamount to like the message boards back in the day, or like book your own life. I don't know if you're on this podcast.
We don't care.
Meeting people.
I'm a potty mouth.
Yeah. Meeting
you
people.
Didn't hear me when I muted my naked son came in here. So
it was so cute.
It was pretty adorable.
He's a pretty cute guy.
He was a maniac. He was just running around.
Really
Well, his
cute.
mom had the door cracked, and I had you guys on mute, or I had me on mute so you couldn't hear her. But she was like, "Come out here now," and he's like, "No, I'm gonna do what I want." Hi, Daddy.
I feel that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's some good
So-
life lessons there. I'm gonna do what I want.
Yeah. So you were talking about meeting people.
I get to like meet people and like make friends or like see people in real life that I've made friends with on the internet. And actually interact with folks who like my work, which is such a great boost to like what you're doing. Like, I believe that I would make art if I was living on an island and just like draw the animals that were living there in the sand or whatever, which maybe sounds more prolific than it actually is. It would probably be partially out of boredom, but it's really nice to like be able to interact with people. And so like, it's such a boon to what I do to be able to go to conventions like that and like talk to those people and meet them. Like, whereas I would have no other way of doing that. Otherwise, I'm not going to like meet up with a stranger at a weird city that I'm randomly traveling through. I mean, I don't know.
How does it work with the virtual conventions in the code?
Well, I've done 2 so far, and they were both very different. One was more of like creating its own individual social media platform. So it would be like a tiny little Facebook that you would just interact with those people for the weekend. And then they had a wall that you would like talk to people, and like you were supposed to create demos and things. And the second one that I was on, they actually asked me to do a watercolor demo, which they have since archived, so you can see that on Jackson Galaxy's YouTube now, which is actually pretty fun because I pretend to be Bob Ross.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, gotta
we'll
wake
have to
up
put a
here.
clip of that up, Joshua.
You could.
We can't wait. You literally pretend to be Bob Ross?
Yeah, painting happy little cats. It's called The Joy of Painting Your Cat. And I gave people a downloadable template, and then I did like a 20-minute tutorial, like just using like the outlines of a random cat and how they would paint their cat into it. And I used a tabby as an example because I think that's the most common cat coloring. Everybody's got a tabby.
I usually have one running around in this room.
There you go. Yep. It's probably under the bed, I would assume.
I don't know where she is. She's a wild one. She's young. So she's got a feral mama. So she's very, very affectionate, but when she wants to be.
Yeah. I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that. I've got a couple feral fosters right now. Well, not feral. They're feral mom kittens that I'm socializing.
It's the best.
Yeah, they're pretty great. Winning
I've got one right back here. It's just hard to see because she's such a dark shape.
Yeah. Yeah, we recently acquired a 4th cat accidentally. Basically because our other cats got along with her so well. I've never seen cats be so affectionate and together as they are with this cat. It's kind of like gluing our house together right now.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, it's very strange.
And your husband's in alignment with the cat?
He was the one who was like, "Can you in our room?"
That's so sweet.
Yeah, I see what's happening here. And it's so funny because she hissed at every other cat she's ever seen. She like didn't get along with her sisters, like hissing and spitting like aggressively. And she ended up like just like beelining out of the room anytime because you have to quarantine foster cats for the first like 2 weeks that they're living with you, just to prevent any cross contamination. But she would beeline anytime I opened the door right for them, just purring and like rubbing, and then would see anything else and hiss.
Huh. Interesting.
Soulmates.
I guess
she was meant to be your family, right?
I mean, I think you kind of just know when you like bond with an animal.
Yeah, totally. That's actually we have a rescue doggy too, and he's my dog, like 100%. And I'm surprised he's not on the bed back here right now because he follows me everywhere. There must be food out there that he's eating. So It's usually scratching at the door. Let me in. Where are you?
Aw,
Yeah.
he misses
So
he's
he's
definitely thinking about you right now.
yeah, of course. So that convention, the last one, then was that a cat convention, or was it a?
Yeah,
Okay.
the ones I've done this year have been cat conventions. I think people are still like learning how to do this.
Hmm.
But I feel like I need to get good at it because I don't know what the future looks like
Okay.
in terms of virtual conventions v real life conventions, if there will be accurate rapid testing, etc. Like I'm probably more on the cautious end of the folks that I know and have not done much outside of my own home. I'm
Right.
still working from home. My husband has been working from home. All of his clients are still on the West Coast, so he's
Right.
been here the whole time. Um, but yeah, no, we're kind of just navigating new ground right now. And the third convention I'll do in a couple weeks is also a cat convention. So we'll see. Maybe next year I'll be doing other ones that are
Yeah.
outside of that.
Well, I mean, I think especially with the stuff that you were talking about, like the enamel pins and some of the other like merchandise you bring with you, that I
Yeah.
mean that definitely has some overflow to other, like some of the craft fairs and some of the other,
Yeah.
the other stuff that where you can move, kind of sell products and get things moving. I know I mean, it's hard because like I think that the West Coast Craft Fair is happening here this weekend, and they just basically moved it from inside to the parking lot at Fort Mason.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so and I'm probably not going to go, but I think that my wife might head down there and just check it out. I get a little more nervous about stuff.
Yeah.
But whatever. I'm curious to see how it goes. A lot of stuff's opening up here, and I know restaurants are going to be open, etc.
Yeah.
Were you doing all of your art at home previously, or were you working out of a studio?
No, we actually are lucky enough because we live in the Midwest now to have space, which
Right.
is one of the benefits of living in a flyover state.
Mhm.
That you have. So I am in my computer office right now with my Cintiq, which is like a large drawing tablet, and then we have like a painting studio in the basement.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's amazing.
My husband also paints.
So that's what it's like if I left the Bay Area. That's what my life could be
Yeah,
like.
you would have a house, dude,
God
for
damn it.
what
Yeah,
you
it's
pay for a one bedroom. We also have a
crazy.
yard
Yeah,
and a garage. Just
it's
saying.
I know. We went to Sedona, Arizona last week, and even there, like, it's not cheap comparatively to other parts of Arizona because it's a
Sure.
very established community.
Yeah.
But compared to the Bay Area, even with the prices coming down, it's insane.
Yeah.
I'm like, and it's obviously it's picturesque, it's beautiful, but
Yeah.
it's there's something about being close to the ocean for me. How close are you all to Lake Michigan?
We're fairly close. We live a little west of it, a little further in. But I don't think I could live away from a large body of water.
Right.
Like that helps me not feel claustrophobic.
Yep. Well, and the
Um,
Great Lakes feel like oceans because you
they
can't see the other
do.
side. Yeah.
I know people are saying there's a big difference, but yeah, obviously, but you can't really tell when you're standing at the shore.
Yeah. The first time I saw one of the Great Lake, well, it was Lake Michigan as well. I was like, I thought I was at an ocean. I mean, the
Yeah,
only
me too.
difference is the
Yeah.
power of the tide. I mean, that's really it.
For sure.
But it's when you're standing there, it's like, oh my God, this is a gigantic body of water that
Yeah,
I
you
cannot see across. And if I went out there, I don't know if I would ever see across it. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
a
there's
it's a
um
powerful experience. Like,
for sure. You can take a ferry like from Milwaukee to I think Manistee, Michigan.
yeah,
And there's a point where you can't see either part of the land.
I bet.
Like
Yeah.
it's that big. It's
Mhm.
not nothing.
It is. I
I have
used
a,
to
I
go
have a
fishing on one of the Great Lakes with my dad all the time,
Oh
and it was
wow.
basically really easy to get lost
Yeah.
because once you're out, all the houses look exactly the same, and all the docks look exactly the same.
Hmm.
yeah, that's true. That's funny. I never thought about that. So I have been to Lake Michigan on multiple sides,
Sure.
having lived in Michigan, Chicago, and then
Yeah.
Milwaukee as well. But when I was touring in the like early 90s with a hardcore band, we played in Milwaukee, and I was actually drinking at the time. I'm, many years sober now, but we did a little beer tour, and I ended up skinny dipping in Lake Michigan. And I will tell you that in the dead of summer, it is still freezing.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
it is.
going to be the other thing I said about it, is that you still don't want to swim in it either, even
No.
though it's a lake.
Yeah, it wasn't really, it was not recommended by the locals,
Yeah.
but I had to do it. So, there you are. There's my youth in a nutshell right there, touring with a bunch of dudes in a van and playing hardcore shows and jumping in Lake Michigan. So, but it's a great town. It really is. And congratulations on actually being able to get a house.
We're just renting it right now, so we don't own it.
Still.
I still have a bit of commitment phobia about buying a house. I think maybe it comes from like small living the whole time, like being in the Bay Area for 12 years.
Yeah.
And not owning anything and not having to take care of it when the roof randomly leaks when it rains for a month.
Yeah, it's a very different experience. So are you sort of not committed to, but planning on staying in Milwaukee for the foreseeable future?
I don't know, man. The world is wide.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, it seems like you found somebody that's like your partner in this exploration as well, which is amazing, because that's not always easy either.
Yeah. It's nice
Loves
to be
cats and will travel with you. I mean, come on.
Yeah. We have so many cats right now, though.
you kind of got it dialed in, though. I mean, you gotta
have I guess, they could travel 2 and 2 at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So, in terms of your work, you have, do you have anything kind of big on the horizon that you can talk about? We don't want to get you talking about things that are sort of still not, announced, but what's happening? What's your kind of your new projects?
Well, I have a book that I wrote with my partner that just came out September 1st called Unfamiliar Familiars. And it's about a fake fact book kind of about witch familiars and like what their magical names might be and who they might partner best with. It's basically my dream book from when I was a kid.
Awesome.
Having like read The Hobbit at an early age and like told my mom in kindergarten that I wanted to be a vampire when I grew up. She was saying that might be problematic and I didn't understand why. Yeah, and my favorite books were like, do you guys remember the story about the green ribbon?
Yeah.
The girl with the green ribbon? Yeah. That was my favorite book.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So you had eclectic taste early on.
Yeah, I was like cottagecore baby goth, I guess.
Yeah, totally. That's so funny. It's and then everybody got Harry Potter, so it was
Yeah, and now we're falling out of it, and
yeah, I was I had a lot of goth friends in high school, and I read all the Anne Rice books.
Oh sure.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah,
those were the jam back then. And
yeah, I mean, I think I went to Interview with the Vampire on opening night, like with my dad because I was too young to get in, and there were people like full on dressed up.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Now I'm gonna have to revisit those books in that movie.
I don't know if any of it holds up.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I know it. Like it seems so great at the time, and I feel like the descriptive language around those kinds of stories has gotten so much even better and more concise that it's hard to go backwards. But there's some nostalgia there.
Well, it's also who you were when you read them, right? Like at that time, I was way more into vampires than I am now. So yeah.
So how do people get the new book?
It's released from Chronicle Books. They can go to chroniclebooks.com/familiar.
Okay.
And they can take a quiz on what their familiar would be. And it's kind of
that's fun.
A YA book, like a picture book for kids, but for adults.
Okay.
There are jokes about Walt Whitman in it.
Excellent.
Oh, that's awesome! I can't wait to see this. We'll put a link up too on the website when we post this.
And anything other stuff that you're doing for other people?
I just finished doing Maximum Fun's work for their pledge drive, doing their own animal pins.
Awesome.
I'm probably doing a couple animal rescue, animal from sanctuary things coming up. And I have 2 projects coming out with Chronicle Books next fall that are TBD named. at this point, but one will be a game and one will be a book.
Oh, amazing. That's really fun.
I think that when you start making your own things and start publishing things, you kind of have to make things a year in advance. So I'm like in the point right now where I've worked on something so much that I kind of hate it and that I'll love it again when it finally comes out in a year.
Sure. Yeah.
Totally.
You're like, I just want to be done.
Yeah.
It makes total sense. And then in terms of any nonprofits that you're working with as well, you mentioned obviously one, but I know that many people that do art have sort of ones that are near and dear. Anybody we should be supporting out there?
Gosh, the Catcade is an amazing nonprofit in Chicago. Flatbush Cats in New York.
You know them.
There's so many. I know that there's a vegan sanctuary here that is doing a fundraiser, and they're slipping my mind at the moment. But they're if you give to an animal group that's local to you, you're probably going to make a lot more of a difference than like somebody across country.
I wholeheartly agree with that. And, you know, there's a lot of really good organizations that are doing things like, you know, what, you know, we talked about with Hannah, where they're taking larger donations and then distributing them to smaller organizations that really need the money. So watch out for those as well. And so we're coming up pretty close to time. We always have a few announcements that we have to talk about. I think just in closing, there's a couple of just short little, should be easy answer questions. You don't have to think about too much. You know, I would assume that when you do the cat conventions, especially live, that you get approached by children as well.
Yeah.
And what would be your advice to a kid that wants to do art? I mean, you know, other than don't become an artist like your aunt, but what would be your advice?
Draw everything that you see.
Okay. That's awesome advice. I think we could.
Quick answer.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And then, you know, obviously we like to keep in touch with the people that we interview. So if you have any cool projects that come up in the next, you know, few months to a year, just email us. I post stuff regularly about, you know, because we, like I say, we're not that proud of the people we interview, just totally proud of them. And and we're super happy to share any cool work that you're doing, that you feel like, you know, that you especially stuff you have your heart in. So I just want to say thank you for coming on, and we really appreciate the time. I know, again, there's a time difference here. So I just feel like it was a very, very sincere interview, and we always appreciate that. So two quick things for the podcast. One, as people hear every week, we are raising money this year. We did it for our entire last season. I suppose we'll come up with a new nonprofit for season 4, but we will pick a nonprofit. So anything that goes to Patreon will likely go to a nonprofit, because as you do, we have day jobs that pay our rent and bills, at least for now. The other thing is we have some amazing guests coming up. I think you're on mute, Joshua.
So I just wanted to say that you mentioned that, but before we decide our next one, what currently our
yes. So right now it's Hospitality House San Francisco, who you may be familiar with because they do an art auction every year. So you may or may not be getting an email from me for art auction next year about possibly an in-kind piece to help people with mental health issues and those that are recovering from substance abuse get off the streets, which is near and dear to me for a large variety of reasons. But the other thing is that we have an incredible lineup this season. We've already, you're our third guest, but we're going to have the Catman of West Oakland on.
Awesome.
So Adam's coming on. I believe his interview is in 2 weeks.
We've pivoted completely to cats.
I guess so.
Well, but then we're also interviewing an author that I love in the next couple of weeks, Anna Merlin, who wrote Republic of Lies, which is about conspiracy theories. And then
about cats too.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll talk about cats with her for sure. I mean, why not? And then we're going to be interviewing a podcaster and journalist named Maggie Freeling. And she is doing a podcast right now called Unjust and Unsolved, which deals with people that are unjustly in prison and the fact that their crimes have actually never been solved. And there's lots of proof backing these up. She was formerly at Latino USA. So we've got some great guests this season. I'm super excited, and we're working on a couple of other surprises. And
we also have some secret guests.
Some other hardcore animal advocates that have a little bit of a following around the world. So we're working hard. And again, we really appreciate you coming on, Megan, and
Thank you so much.
Just keep us updated on everything you're doing.
For sure.
All right? Great.
And thanks for listening, everybody.